When a waiter lets a hungry street girl sing in a bustling bistro to earn her dinner, he puts his job at risk and sets off a chain of events that will defy everything. As the restaurant's stern boss arrives, tensions rise and chaos reigns. Can music and compassion be enough? Will this risky decision lead to ruin? Find out now. The Harmony Bistro stood as a beacon of warmth on the bustling streets of Chicago. Its rustic brick exterior and softly glowing windows invited passers-by to step into a world where culinary delights and musical talents intertwined. For years, it had been more than just a restaurant. It was a nurturing ground for local artists, a place where dreams were served alongside exquisite dishes. At the heart of this establishment was Ethan Ramirez, a young man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. He moved through the restaurant with practiced ease, his movements a dance learned over years of observing his father, the previous owner. Ethan's father had passed away 6 months ago, leaving him to manage the bistro, a responsibility he shouldered with determination and a touch of trepidation. "Table 7's order is up, Ethan," called out Mia, the head waitress, her voice cutting through the gentle hum of conversation and clinking cutlery. Ethan nodded, deftly balancing 3 plates on his arms. As he served the patrons, he couldn't help but let his gaze wander to the small stage in the corner. It stood empty tonight, a rare sight in the Harmony Bistro. "No performer tonight?" asked Mrs. Goldstein, a regular who had been coming to the bistro for as long as Ethan could remember. "Not tonight, Mrs. G," Ethan replied with a smile. "But tomorrow we've got a jazz quartet that I think you'll love." As he moved back towards the kitchen, Ethan's fingers twitched involuntarily, mimicking the chords of a guitar. Music had always been his first love, a passion he shared with his father. But now, with the weight of the restaurant on his shoulders, his own musical aspirations had been pushed to the background. The kitchen doors swung open, and the aroma of garlic and herbs wafted out. Mr. Harold Whitaker, the head chef, emerged, his crisp white uniform a stark contrast to his stern expression. "Ethan, a word," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. As Ethan followed Mr. Whitaker back into the kitchen, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Little did he know that fate was about to play its hand, bringing a melody to the Harmony Bistro that would change everything. Outside, the Chicago wind whistled through the streets, carrying with it the crisp scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. The sun had long since set, and the city was alive with the glow of streetlights and neon signs. The Harmony Bistro's warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, a stark contrast to the chilly autumn air. It was in this pool of light that Lily Thompson sat, her small frame hunched over a battered guitar case. At 15, she looked both older and younger than her years, her face pinched with hunger and worry, yet her eyes still holding a flicker of youthful hope. Her fingers, red from the cold, absently traced the worn edges of her case. Passers-by hurried past, collars turned up against the wind, barely sparing a glance for the young girl. The occasional clink of coins in her upturned hat was drowned out by the rumble of traffic and the chatter of diners entering and exiting the bistro. Lily's stomach growled, a painful reminder of how long it had been since her last meal. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. The tantalizing aroma of the Harmony Bistro's famous rosemary bread wafted through the air, making her mouth water. "Just a little longer," she whispered to herself, her breath visible in the cold air. "Something will turn up. It has to." As if in response, the bistro's door opened, letting out a burst of warmth and laughter. Lily's eyes darted up, hope flaring briefly before dying as she realized it was just another satisfied customer leaving. She hugged her guitar case closer, seeking comfort in the familiar shape. Music had been her constant companion since everything had changed. It was her solace, her escape, and now her only means of survival. As the night grew colder and the streets emptied, Lily's resolve began to waver. Perhaps it was time to find a shelter for the night. But just as she was about to stand, the bistro's door opened once more, and a figure stepped out, eyes scanning the street before landing on her. Ethan stood in the doorway of the Harmony Bistro, his brow furrowed as he took in the sight of the young girl huddled on the sidewalk. The conversation with Mr. Whitaker about budget cuts and profit margins faded from his mind as he watched her shiver in the autumn chill. He hesitated, torn between the demands of the restaurant and the pull of his conscience. His father's words echoed in his memory. Son, our music feeds the soul, but it's our compassion that truly nourishes. Taking a deep breath, Ethan made his decision. He stepped out onto the sidewalk, approaching Lily with a gentle smile. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "I couldn't help but notice you've been out here for a while. Are you okay?" Lily looked up, her eyes wary but unable to hide a flicker of hope. "I'm fine," she mumbled, her stomach choosing that moment to let out a loud growl. Ethan's smile widened. "Sounds like you could use a warm meal. Listen, I've got an idea. How about you come inside and play a few songs for our customers? In exchange, I'll make sure you get a hot dinner. What do you say?" Lily's eyes widened, darting between Ethan and the warm glow of the bistro. "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course," Ethan nodded. "Music is the heart of this place, and between you and me," he leaned in conspiratorially, "our stage has been a little too quiet tonight." A small smile tugged at Lily's lips, the first genuine one she'd had in days. I'd like that. Thank you." As Ethan helped Lily to her feet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was doing more than just offering a meal. He was throwing a lifeline, just as his father had done for so many aspiring musicians over the years. "I'm Ethan, by the way," he said as he held the door open for her. "Lily," she replied, clutching her guitar case close as she stepped into the warmth of the bistro. As the door closed behind them, neither Ethan nor Lily noticed the figure watching from across the street. Mr. Harold Whitaker stood in the shadows, his expression unreadable as he observed the scene unfold. With a shake of his head, he turned and walked away, his mind already racing with the implications of Ethan's impulsive act of kindness. Inside the Harmony Bistro, the stage lights flickered to life, and a new chapter was about to begin. The warmth of the Harmony Bistro enveloped Lily as she stepped inside, the sudden change in temperature bringing a flush to her pale cheeks. The rich aroma of herbs and spices made her stomach growl even louder, reminding her of how long it had been since her last proper meal. Ethan guided her gently through the restaurant, past curious glances from patrons and staff alike. Lily clutched her guitar case tighter, feeling suddenly self-conscious about her worn clothes and tangled hair. "Here," Ethan said, stopping at a small table near the stage. "Why don't you sit down and I'll bring you something to eat first. Then we can talk about your performance." Lily nodded, carefully setting her guitar case down before sliding into the chair. Her eyes darted around the bistro, taking in the warm lighting, the artwork on the walls, and the small stage that seemed to beckon her. Ethan returned moments later with a steaming bowl of soup and a thick slice of rosemary bread. "It's our house specialty," he explained with a smile. "Eat up, and we'll chat when you're done." As Lily ate, savoring every spoonful, Ethan pulled up a chair across from her. "So, Lily," he began gently, "how long have you been playing?" Swallowing a mouthful of bread, Lily replied, "As long as I can remember. My dad taught me." Her voice trailed off, a shadow passing over her face. Ethan, sensing her discomfort, quickly changed the subject. "Well, I'm sure our customers would love to hear you play. How about 3 songs to start? If it goes well, we can discuss making it a regular thing." Lily's eyes widened. "Regular? You mean I could come back?" Ethan nodded, his kind smile never wavering. "If that's something you'd like, we can certainly discuss it. But for now, let's focus on tonight. What do you say?" For a moment, Lily hesitated. Then with a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." As Ethan stood to make the arrangements, Lily turned to look at the stage. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The gentle murmur of conversation in the Harmony Bistro hushed as Ethan stepped onto the small stage. He tapped the microphone, drawing all eyes to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice warm and inviting, "we have a special treat for you tonight. Please welcome to our stage, for the first time at the Harmony Bistro, the talented Lily Thompson." A smattering of polite applause filled the room as Lily, guitar in hand, made her way to the stage. Her hands trembled slightly as she settled onto the stool, adjusting the microphone. She took a deep breath, her fingers finding their place on the fretboard. And then, she began to play. The first notes rang out, clear and true, filling the bistro with a melody both haunting and beautiful. When Lily's voice joined her guitar, the effect was mesmerizing. Her song, a soulful rendition of Hallelujah, seemed to come from somewhere deep within her, each word carrying the weight of her experiences. As she sang, a transformation seemed to come over the bistro. Conversations ceased, silverware was set down, and all attention focused on the young girl on the stage. Even the kitchen staff peeked out, drawn by the music. Ethan, watching from the back of the room, felt a lump form in his throat. There was something in Lily's performance that reminded him of the passion his father had always spoken about, the kind of music that could touch souls. As the last notes of her first song faded, there was a moment of silence. Then, as if a spell had been broken, the bistro erupted in applause. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Encouraged by the response, Lily launched into her second song, an upbeat folk tune that had feet tapping and heads nodding along. By the time she reached her third and final song, a tender ballad of her own composition, the atmosphere in the bistro had completely transformed. Strangers were smiling at each other, sharing in the joy of the music. The staff moved with a new energy, as if Lily's songs had infused them with fresh vigor. And Ethan, watching it all unfold, felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This, he thought, was what the Harmony Bistro was truly about. As Lily's final note hung in the air, the bistro once again erupted in applause, this time accompanied by cheers and calls for an encore. Lily beamed, her earlier nervousness forgotten in the warmth of the audience's response. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. As Ethan moved to congratulate Lily, the bistro's door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped in, his stern gaze sweeping the room. Mr. Harold Whitaker had arrived. The applause died down as Mr. Whitaker's imposing figure made its way through the bistro. His crisp white chef's uniform seemed to part the crowd, and the jovial atmosphere that had permeated the room just moments ago now gave way to a tense silence. Ethan's smile faltered as he watched Mr. Whitaker approach. The head chef's face was an unreadable mask, his eyes fixed on Lily, who was still on stage, clutching her guitar like a lifeline. "Mr. Ramirez." Whitaker's voice cut through the silence. "A word, if you please." Ethan nodded, turning to Lily with what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Great job, Lily. Why don't you take a short break? I'll be right back." As Ethan followed Mr. Whitaker to a quiet corner of the bistro, he could feel the eyes of the patrons on them. The murmur of conversation slowly resumed, but there was an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there before. "Would you care to explain," Mr. Whitaker began, his voice low but sharp, "why there's a street performer on our stage? This is a respectable establishment, not some back-alley music hall." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Mr. Whitaker, I know this is unconventional, but if you just listen to her—" "Listen," Whitaker interrupted. "I heard plenty. What I want to know is why you thought it appropriate to make this decision without consulting me. We have standards to maintain, protocols to follow." As Whitaker continued his reprimand, Ethan's gaze drifted back to Lily. She was sitting at the edge of the stage, her fingers absently strumming her guitar as she watched their exchange with worried eyes. Around her, patrons were smiling, some even approaching to compliment her performance. "Mr. Whitaker," Ethan said, turning back to the chef, "I understand your concerns. But look around. The customers loved her performance. Isn't that what we're here for? To create memorable experiences?" Whitaker's frown deepened. "Experiences, yes. But not at the expense of our reputation. This isn't what your father would have—" He stopped abruptly, seeing the flash of pain in Ethan's eyes. For a moment, the stern facade cracked, revealing a hint of sympathy. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. "We'll discuss this further in private," Whitaker said, turning on his heel and striding towards the kitchen. Ethan watched him go, a mix of emotions swirling within him. He knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Somehow, he had to find a way to bridge the gap between Whitaker's rigid standards and the undeniable magic that Lily had brought to the Harmony Bistro. With a deep breath, he turned back to the dining room, ready to face whatever came next. The kitchen door swung shut behind Ethan as he followed Mr. Whitaker into the bustling heart of the Harmony Bistro. The clanging of pots and sizzle of pans provided a stark contrast to the melodious atmosphere that had filled the dining room moments ago. "Mr. Whitaker," Ethan began, his voice firm despite the nervous flutter in his stomach. "I know this isn't our usual protocol, but—" "Protocol?" Whitaker interrupted, turning to face Ethan with a stern expression. "This goes beyond protocol, Mr. Ramirez. This is about the very essence of what the Harmony Bistro stands for." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. And what exactly do you think that is, sir? Whitaker's eyebrows shot up at the challenge in Ethan's tone. Excellence, Mr. Ramirez. Consistency. A reputation built over years of hard work and dedication. Not impromptu performances by street urchins. Lily is not a street urchin, Ethan retorted, feeling a surge of protectiveness. She's a talented musician who needed a chance. Isn't that what my father always believed in? Giving people a chance? At the mention of Ethan's father, Whitaker's expression softened slightly. Your father, he said, his voice lower now, understood the delicate balance between nurturing talent and running a successful business. He would have given her a chance, Ethan interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. He would have seen what I saw out there. A bistro coming alive with music, customers engaged and happy. Isn't that what we're here for? For a moment, silence fell between them, broken only by the rhythmic chopping of vegetables and the hiss of steam. Mr. Ramirez, Whitaker finally said, his tone measured. I understand your intentions were good, but good intentions don't pay the bills or maintain our reputation. We can't just... He was cut off by a burst of applause from the dining room. Both men turned towards the sound, then back to each other. Listen to that, Ethan said softly. That's not just polite applause. That's genuine appreciation. When was the last time you heard that in here? Whitaker's frown deepened, but Ethan could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Give her a chance, Ethan pleaded. 1 week. Let's see how the customers respond. If it doesn't work out, I'll take full responsibility. Whitaker studied Ethan for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed. 1 week, Mr. Ramirez. But I warn you, if this experiment of yours affects our bottom line or our reputation in any way. He left the threat unfinished, but Ethan understood. As Whitaker turned back to his duties, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. Now, he just had to make sure Lily understood the opportunity and the stakes that lay before her. Ethan found Lily sitting at the edge of the stage, her fingers nervously plucking at her guitar strings. The patrons around her were still buzzing with excitement from her performance, but Lily's eyes were fixed on Ethan, worry evident in her gaze. Hey, Ethan said softly, crouching down beside her. You were amazing up there. The customers loved you. Lily's lips quirked into a small smile, but it quickly faded. But that man, the chef, he didn't look happy. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Mr. Whitaker, he's set in his ways, but I've convinced him to give you a chance. 1 week, Lily. We've got 1 week to prove that your music belongs here. Lily's eyes widened. A week? But I don't know if I can. I mean, where will I stay? What about food? Ethan hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. We've got a small room upstairs. It's not much, but it's warm and safe. And of course, we'll make sure you're fed. But Lily, I need to know. What brought you here? Where are your parents? The question hung in the air between them. Lily's fingers stilled on her guitar, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might not answer. They're gone, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. Car accident, 6 months ago. I couldn't stay in the foster home they put me in. Music was the only thing that made sense anymore, so I left. Been on my own ever since. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He thought of his own loss, the pain of losing his father still fresh. Without thinking, he reached out and squeezed Lily's hand. I'm so sorry, Lily. I know it's not the same, but I lost my dad recently too. It's not easy. Lily looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes. For a moment, they shared a silent understanding, a connection forged through shared loss. So, Ethan said, straightening up and offering Lily a smile. What do you say? Are you ready to show Mr. Whitaker and the rest of Chicago what you can do? Lily took a deep breath, her grip tightening on her guitar. Then, with a determination that surprised even her, she nodded. I'm ready. As the week progressed, the Harmony Bistro underwent a subtle but significant transformation. Lily's nightly performances became the talk of the neighborhood, drawing in curious locals and even a few music enthusiasts who had heard whispers of the young prodigy at the corner bistro. Mr. Whitaker, true to his word, watched the proceedings with a critical eye. He scrutinized the nightly receipts, listened to customer feedback, and kept a close watch on the kitchen's operations. Yet, even he couldn't deny the change in atmosphere. On the fourth night, as Lily's voice soared through a particularly moving rendition of Bridge Over Troubled Water, Whitaker found himself pausing in his rounds. He stood in the shadows at the back of the dining room, his arms crossed, watching as the entire bistro seemed to hold its breath, captivated by the young girl on stage. He observed as a couple at a nearby table reached for each other's hands, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. At the bar, a group of businessmen had set aside their phones, their usual hurried demeanor replaced by rapt attention. Even the waitstaff moved with a new grace, as if Lily's music had infused the very air with a special energy. As the song came to an end, Whitaker's gaze shifted to Ethan, who stood near the stage, a proud smile on his face. For a moment, Whitaker saw not the young manager, but his old friend, Ethan's father, in that same spot, nurturing new talent with the same passionate belief. The spell was broken by the thunderous applause that erupted as Lily's song ended. Whitaker watched as patrons stood, some wiping away tears, others grinning widely as they clapped. He saw money being slipped into the tip jar by the stage, far more generous than their usual gratuities. It was at that moment that Mr. Harold Whitaker, known for his unwavering dedication to tradition and protocol, felt something shift within him. He remembered the words he had often heard from Ethan's father. "Harold, my friend, sometimes the most beautiful harmonies come from the most unexpected places." As he turned to head back to the kitchen, Whitaker caught Ethan's eye. The young man's expression was a mix of hope and apprehension. Whitaker held his gaze for a moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Ethan's face broke into a relieved smile, understanding the unspoken message. It wasn't a full endorsement, not yet, but it was acknowledgement, and perhaps the beginning of acceptance. As Whitaker pushed through the kitchen doors, he found himself humming Lily's last song under his breath. Perhaps, he thought, it was time for the Harmony Bistro to embrace a new kind of harmony. As the week progressed, the dynamic between Mr. Whitaker and Lily began to shift. What started as wary glances and terse nods gradually evolved into something resembling mutual respect. One evening, as Lily finished her set and made her way to the kitchen for a glass of water, she found Mr. Whitaker meticulously plating a dish. She hesitated at the door, unsure if she should enter. "Well, don't just stand there," Whitaker said, not looking up from his work. "Come in if you're coming in." Lily stepped inside, her eyes wide as she took in the organized chaos of the kitchen. She watched in fascination as Whitaker's hands moved with practiced precision, turning simple ingredients into a work of art. "You know," Whitaker said, breaking the silence, "cooking is not so different from music. It's all about harmony, balance, and timing." Lily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I never thought of it that way, but I can see it now. The way you bring everything together. It's like composing a song." Whitaker glanced up, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Exactly. Now tell me, when you're writing a song, how do you know when it's finished?" Lily thought for a moment. "I don't think it's ever really finished. There's always room for improvement, for a new interpretation, but there's a moment when it feels right, when all the pieces fit together in a way that resonates." A ghost of a smile flickered across Whitaker's face. "Well said. That's precisely how it is in the kitchen. We're always striving for perfection, even if we know it's an endless journey." He picked up the finished plate and held it out to Lily. "Here, you've earned this." As Lily took the plate, their eyes met, and an understanding passed between them. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was a start. A foundation of mutual respect upon which something more could be built. As Lily left the kitchen, savoring the first bite of Whitaker's creation, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the food. For the first time since arriving at the Harmony Bistro, she felt like she might truly belong. The Harmony Bistro was buzzing with energy on a particularly busy Friday night. Lily's music wove through the air, blending seamlessly with the clinking of cutlery and the murmur of conversation. At a corner table, Ethan sat with a group of regular patrons, all of them tapping their feet to the rhythm of Lily's latest song. "You know, Ethan," said Mrs. Goldstein, her eyes twinkling, "I've been coming to this bistro for years. but I don't think I've ever seen it quite like this. There's a special kind of magic in the air these days." Ethan smiled, his gaze drifting to Lily on the stage. "I couldn't agree more, Mrs. G. It's like the bistro has found its heartbeat again." As the evening wore on, Ethan noticed something remarkable. Strangers were striking up conversations, sharing their thoughts on the music and the food. The staff moved with a new spring in their step, their smiles more genuine than he could remember seeing in months. Even Mr. Whitaker seemed affected by the change. Ethan watched in amazement as the usually stern chef emerged from the kitchen, pausing to chat with a table of diners about their meal. There was a softness to his demeanor that Ethan had rarely seen before. As Lily finished her set, the bistro erupted in applause. She made her way off the stage, accepting compliments with a shy smile. Ethan met her halfway, grinning broadly. "You were fantastic tonight, Lily," he said. "I think you've won over every heart in this place." Lily blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks, Ethan. I never thought I'd find a place where I felt so at home again. You've all been so kind to me." Ethan was about to respond when he noticed Mr. Whitaker approaching. He tensed slightly, still wary of the chef's opinion on their arrangement. But to his surprise, Whitaker addressed Lily directly. "Miss Thompson," he said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "Your music selection tonight was particularly fitting. It complemented the menu quite well." Coming from Whitaker, this was high praise indeed. Lily's eyes widened, a grin spreading across her face. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. I'm glad you enjoyed it." As Whitaker nodded and turned back to the kitchen, Ethan caught a glimpse of something he hadn't seen in a long time, a genuine smile on the chef's face. In that moment, Ethan felt a surge of hope. The Harmony Bistro was more than just living up to its name. It was becoming a true community, a place where music, food, and people came together in perfect harmony. Just as the Harmony Bistro seemed to be hitting its stride, new challenges emerged to test the fragile balance they had achieved. It began with a scathing online review from a local food critic, questioning the bistro's shift towards amateur entertainment at the expense of culinary focus. The morning after the review was published, Ethan found Mr. Whitaker poring over it in the kitchen, his brow furrowed in concern. "This could be damaging, Mr. Ramirez," Whitaker said, his voice tight. "We've worked hard to build our reputation as a fine dining establishment. If word spreads that we're becoming some sort of variety show, it could hurt our standing in the culinary community." Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew Whitaker had a point, but the thought of going back to the way things were before Lily arrived felt wrong. As if summoned by their conversation, Lily appeared at the kitchen door, her face pale. I saw the review," she said quietly. "Maybe it would be better if I left." "I don't want to cause trouble for you all." "Nonsense," Ethan said quickly, surprising even himself with the vehemence in his voice. "We're not giving up that easily. We just need to find a way to show people that great food and great music can coexist." Whitaker raised an eyebrow. "And how do you propose we do that, Mr. Ramirez?" Ethan thought for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. What if we invited the critic back, gave him a full experience of what the Harmony Bistro is really about?" Whitaker looked skeptical, but Ethan could see a glimmer of interest in his eyes. "It's risky," the chef mused. "If it doesn't go well, it could be the final nail in our coffin." "But if it does go well," Lily chimed in, a spark of excitement in her voice, "it could be just what we need to silence the doubters." Ethan looked between Lily and Whitaker, feeling a surge of determination. "What do you say? Are we willing to take that risk?" For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, almost imperceptibly, Whitaker nodded. "Very well, Mr. Ramirez. Let's show this critic what the Harmony Bistro is truly capable of." As they began to plan, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this challenge might just be the making of them all. The days leading up to the critic's return visit were a whirlwind of activity at the Harmony Bistro. Ethan, Lily, and Mr. Whitaker found themselves working together in ways they never had before, each bringing their unique strengths to the table. Whitaker threw himself into crafting a menu that would showcase the bistro's culinary prowess while complementing Lily's music. His usual stern demeanor gave way to a focused intensity as he experimented with new flavor combinations and presentation styles. The key, he explained to Ethan and Lily one evening, is to create a sensory experience that engages not just the palate, but also enhances the auditory experience of the music. Lily, for her part, spent hours refining her set list. She worked on arrangements that would pair perfectly with each course, her guitar becoming an extension of herself as she practiced late into the night. Ethan found himself in the role of mediator and motivator, smoothing over disagreements and keeping spirits high as the pressure mounted. He also took charge of revamping the bistro's ambiance, tweaking the lighting and seating arrangements to create the perfect atmosphere. As the day of the critics' visit approached, an unexpected challenge arose. The bistro's ancient sound system, which had been on its last legs for months, finally gave out completely. "This is a disaster," Ethan groaned, staring at the defunct equipment. "We can't afford to replace it on such short notice." To everyone's surprise, it was Mr. Whitaker who provided the solution. "I may have an old friend who owes me a favor," he said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Let me make a call." True to his word, Whitaker's friend, a retired sound engineer, arrived the next day with a state-of-the-art portable system. As he set it up, Lily's eyes widened at the quality of the sound it produced. "This is incredible," she breathed, strumming a few chords on her guitar. Whitaker nodded, a look of satisfaction on his face. "Nothing but the best for the Harmony Bistro." As they stood back and surveyed their handiwork, the perfectly set tables, the gleaming kitchen, the new sound system, a sense of unity settled over the trio. They had faced challenges together and come out stronger for it. Ethan looked at Lily and Whitaker, feeling a surge of pride. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "we've already accomplished something amazing here." Lily nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "We're ready. Let's show this critic what harmony really means." The night of the critic's visit arrived, and the Harmony Bistro hummed with nervous energy. As the first patrons began to arrive, Ethan stationed himself near the entrance, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of the notorious food critic. Lily, tuning her guitar backstage, took deep breaths to calm her nerves. She caught sight of her reflection in a mirror and barely recognized the confident young woman staring back at her. Gone was the scared, hungry girl from the street. In her place stood a musician ready to take on the world. In the kitchen, Mr. Whitaker moved with practiced precision, his usual barked orders replaced by a focused silence. His team, sensing the importance of the night, worked in perfect synchronization. As the dining room filled, Ethan finally spotted the critic, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a notebook clutched in her hand. He greeted her warmly, escorting her to the best table in the house. "I hope you'll find your experience tonight illuminating," Ethan said, unable to keep a hint of pride from his voice. The critic raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she settled into her seat. As the evening progressed, something magical began to unfold. Lily's music, perfectly timed to complement each course, filled the air with melodies that seemed to enhance the flavors of Whitaker's expertly crafted dishes. The critic's pen moved constantly across her notebook, her expression unreadable. Ethan moved through the bistro, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He caught Whitaker's eye through the kitchen door and saw something he'd never seen before, a glimmer of hope in the chef's usually stern gaze. As Lily launched into her final song of the night, a hush fell over the bistro. Her voice, rich with emotion, wove a spell over the room. Ethan watched as the critic closed her eyes, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. In that moment, Ethan knew that regardless of what the critic wrote, they had created something special. The Harmony Bistro had found its true voice, a perfect blend of culinary artistry and musical magic. As the last notes faded away and the room erupted in applause, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a team, as a family. Just as the Harmony Bistro was basking in the glow of their successful night, a new challenge emerged. Ethan received word that Mr. Jonathan Blackwell, the reclusive owner of the restaurant chain that included the Harmony Bistro, was planning a surprise visit. Known for his traditional values and no-nonsense approach to business, Blackwell's impending arrival sent a ripple of anxiety through the bistro. Ethan called an emergency meeting with Lily and Mr. Whitaker to strategize. "Mr. Blackwell is old school," Ethan explained, pacing the kitchen. "He believes in a clear separation between fine dining and entertainment. Our new approach might not sit well with him." Whitaker nodded gravely. "I've met him once before. He's not a man easily swayed by sentiment." Lily, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. But surely he'll see how well it's working. The bistro is doing better than ever, right? Ethan sighed. Financially, yes. But Blackwell is known for believing that change is risky. He might see our success as a temporary fluke. As they debated their options, a thought struck Ethan. What if we don't try to hide what we've become? What if we showcase it instead? Whitaker raised an eyebrow. You mean, give him the full Harmony Bistro experience? Ethan nodded, a plan forming in his mind. Exactly. We'll create a special menu that tells our story through food and music. Each course paired with one of Lily's songs, showing how they enhance each other. Lily's eyes lit up. I could write a new song, something that captures the spirit of the bistro. Even Whitaker seemed intrigued by the idea. It's risky, he mused, but it might just work. If we can make him feel the harmony we've created here. As they threw themselves into preparations, Ethan couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. This visit could make or break everything they'd worked for. The day of Blackwell's visit arrived all too soon. As Ethan saw the imposing figure of Mr. Blackwell step out of his sleek black car, he took a deep breath. He glanced at Lily, who gave him a reassuring nod, and at Whitaker, who stood tall and proud in his chef's whites. Well, Ethan said, straightening his tie, let's show Mr. Blackwell what the Harmony Bistro is really about. As he stepped forward to greet their boss, Ethan silently hoped that the magic they'd created in the bistro would be enough to win over even the most traditional of businessmen. As Mr. Blackwell settled into his seat, his piercing gaze taking in every detail of the bistro, Ethan felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. The owner's face remained impassive, giving no hint of his thoughts. Mr. Blackwell, Ethan began, his voice steady despite his nerves. We've prepared a special experience for you tonight that we believe captures the essence of what the Harmony Bistro has become. Blackwell raised an eyebrow. I see. And what exactly has it become, Mr. Ramirez? Before Ethan could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and Lily's voice filled the air. She had composed a gentle melody that seemed to weave through the bistro like a warm breeze. As she sang, Mr. Whitaker emerged from the kitchen, presenting the first course with a flourish. A symphony of flavors, Whitaker explained, his usual gruffness replaced by a quiet pride. Designed to complement the music, just as the music enhances the dining experience. Blackwell's expression remained neutral as he took his first bite. But as the evening progressed, Ethan noticed subtle changes. The owner's posture relaxed slightly. His eyes closed momentarily as he savored a particularly exquisite pairing of food and music. Between courses, Ethan shared stories of how their new approach had impacted the community. He spoke of regular customers who now came not just for the food, but for the atmosphere of warmth and creativity that permeated the bistro. As Lily launched into her final song, a powerful ballad that seemed to encapsulate their journey, Ethan saw something he never expected, a smile tugging at the corners of Mr. Blackwell's mouth. When the last note faded and the lights came up, there was a moment of tense silence. Blackwell set down his napkin and looked at Ethan, then at Whitaker and Lily, who had joined them. Well, he said, his voice betraying a hint of emotion, it seems I may have underestimated the power of harmony. Mr. Ramirez, you and your team have created something truly special here. As relief washed over him, Ethan realized that they had done more than just save their jobs. They had proven that sometimes the most beautiful melodies arise from the most unexpected combinations. In the days following Mr. Blackwell's visit, a new energy pulsed through the Harmony Bistro. The owner's approval had not only secured their future, but had also validated their unconventional approach. However, for Ethan, there was still one loose end to tie up. He found Mr. Whitaker in the kitchen late one evening, meticulously organizing his spice rack. The chef looked up as Ethan entered, a knowing look in his eyes. Mr. Ramirez, Whitaker said, setting down a jar of saffron. I suppose we're overdue for a chat. Ethan nodded, leaning against a spotless countertop. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for everything. I know this wasn't easy for you, accepting all these changes. Whitaker was quiet for a moment, his hands stilling on the spice jars. You know, when your father first hired me, I thought he was mad. A fine dining establishment with live music. It seemed a recipe for disaster. He turned to face Ethan fully, a wry smile on his face. But your father, he had a way of seeing potential where others saw chaos. I see now that you've inherited that gift. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat at the mention of his father. I wasn't sure I could do it, he admitted. Filling his shoes seemed impossible. You haven't filled his shoes, Whitaker said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. You've carved your own path, and in doing so, you've honored his memory more than you know. The chef moved to the refrigerator, pulling out 2 bottles of the bistro's house-made sparkling water. He handed one to Ethan. To New Harmonies, Whitaker said, raising his bottle. Ethan clinked his bottle against Whitaker's, a grin spreading across his face. To New Harmonies, he echoed. As they sipped their drinks, a comfortable silence fell between them. It was broken by the sound of Lily's voice, drifting in from the dining room where she was practicing a new song. You know, Whitaker mused, I never thought I'd say this, but that girl's music, it makes the food taste better somehow. Ethan laughed, the last of the tension between them dissipating. High praise indeed coming from you. As they listened to Lily's melody, Ethan felt a sense of completion. The Harmony Bistro had always been more than just a restaurant. It was a place where food, music, and people came together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. And now, with Whitaker fully on board, Ethan knew they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Harmony Bistro was alive with excitement on the night of its grand relaunch. Strings of twinkling lights adorned the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the packed dining room. The air buzzed with anticipation as regulars and newcomers alike waited for the evening's festivities to begin. Ethan stood at the center of the room, his heart swelling with pride as he looked around at what they had accomplished. Lily, dressed in a simple but elegant dress, tuned her guitar on the stage. Mr. Whitaker, for once out of the kitchen, stood nearby in his pristine chef's whites, a hint of a smile playing on his usually stern face. As the clock struck 7, Ethan tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for attention. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice strong and clear. Welcome to the New Harmony Bistro. Over the past few months, we've been on an incredible journey, one that has taught us the true meaning of harmony. He gestured to Lily and Whitaker, inviting them to join him. With the incredible talent of Lily and the culinary genius of Mr. Whitaker, we've created something unique. A place where food and music don't just coexist, but enhance each other. Lily stepped forward, her guitar in hand. We'd like to share that harmony with you tonight, she said, her voice slightly nervous but filled with excitement. As Lily began to play, Mr. Whitaker signaled his team. Servers emerged from the kitchen, bearing trays of exquisitely crafted appetizers designed to pair perfectly with the music. The evening unfolded like a beautiful symphony, each course accompanied by a carefully chosen melody. Laughter and conversation flowed freely, punctuated by exclamations of delight as guests experienced the magical pairing of flavors and sounds. As the final notes of Lily's last song faded away, the bistro erupted in applause. Ethan looked around at the smiling faces, at Lily's beaming expression, at the pride evident in Mr. Whitaker's stance, and felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This was more than just a successful relaunch. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the Harmony Bistro, one filled with music, flavor, and above all, the joy of bringing people together. 6 months after the grand relaunch, the Harmony Bistro had become one of Chicago's most sought-after dining experiences. Reservations were booked weeks in advance, and food critics raved about the innovative concept of pairing gourmet cuisine with live music. On a crisp autumn evening, much like the one when Lily first arrived, Ethan stood at the entrance of the bistro, watching as patrons filed in, their faces alight with anticipation. The sound of Lily's guitar drifted through the open door, mingling with the savory aromas wafting from the kitchen. Inside, Lily had blossomed into a confident performer, her repertoire expanding to include original compositions that told the story of the bistro and its patrons. Her music had become as much a part of the Harmony Bistro as Mr. Whitaker's culinary creations. Speaking of Mr. Whitaker, the once stern chef had undergone a transformation of his own. While still demanding excellence in his kitchen, he now worked closely with Lily to create menus that complemented her music. The synergy between them had resulted in dining experiences that were nothing short of magical. As for Ethan, he had found a balance between managing the restaurant and pursuing his own musical passions. On quiet nights, after the last customer had left, he would often join Lily on stage, their duets a reminder of the bistro's journey. The Harmony Bistro had become more than just a restaurant. It was a community hub, a place where people came not just to eat, but to connect, to be inspired, and to experience the transformative power of harmony. As Ethan made his way through the bustling dining room, he caught sight of a framed photo on the wall, a picture of his father on the day he opened the bistro. Beside it hung a new photo, taken on the night of the relaunch, showing Ethan, Lily, and Mr. Whitaker, their faces beaming with pride. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. The Harmony Bistro had found its rhythm, its perfect blend of flavors and melodies, and in doing so, it had not only honored his father's legacy, but had created a new one, a legacy of innovation, compassion, and the enduring power of harmony. As the evening's first notes began to play, and the aroma of Mr. Whitaker's latest creation filled the air, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful, harmonious future. What did you think of Lily Attitude? Would you do the same? Leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure there will be new videos to surprise you. Like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you soon.